On today's episode of Up in the Air, we bring on somebody I've personally known for basically 2 decades at this point. It's hard to imagine. He's been able to achieve his lifelong dream of becoming a pilot, but that path got a little blurry when the pandemic hit. We talk about how he quickly adjusted and is now on the other side of the country doing what he loves most. Everybody, Eric Mullins. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 7, Up in the Air, and bringing on my good buddy who I haven't seen in a long time, Eric Mullins. How you doing, Eric?
Dude, how you been? I'm good.
I'm good. We're both not in the same places we were living in last time we saw each other. I know that. So where are you right now?
I am currently located in Nashville, Tennessee. I've moved down south. So Western boy has gone out to the east south here.
So how do you end up in Nashville? I never would have taken as you a person to end up in Nashville out of all places.
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise move. It started like most changes this year for most people because of COVID. The company I was working for, I was working for Contour Airlines out in Santa Barbara,
Right.
your old homeland.
Yes.
And I was doing scheduled air carrier stuff for them there. And then March kind of hit, COVID started to really pick up, so we were furloughed. I went back to Fresno, our hometown, and I was flying there, doing my old aerial survey job. And then I got the call back. The company had a position out here for me to do charter stuff, so now I'm flying private charter, and I went for it. So it kind of took a little bit of a chance, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, I know you've always wanted to be a pilot, ever since I've known you. I mean, I've known you since we were in first grade, playing Little League together. So it's crazy that so much time has gone on and everybody's sort of following their path. And it's like, you're doing what you've always wanted to do. And I don't think a lot of people can say that.
Mm-hmm.
But with the start of the pandemic, and now you're living in a beautiful place, you've got this job you've always wanted. What is your mindset when you're told, we're going to have to let you go? Do you think immediately like my career is derailed at this point?
No, it can be that way for some people. It's definitely an industry that is up and down and can change yearly. Like before COVID hit, it was just the best time to be a pilot. Everybody was hiring. Like there was a shortage, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, and things like that. And they just couldn't hire people fast enough. And then, in the blink of an eye, things can change. So luckily, as you know, my dad is retired from the airlines. So he was kind of grooming me and educating me from day one about how the industry can go. So he was furloughed twice, I believe. A company went bankrupt and completely folded once. So he had 3 kind of instances throughout his long career of uncertainty and things changing like that. So I knew about it. I didn't expect to run into it 4 months into my airline career, but yeah, it's a chance that always happens. So you kind of prepare yourself and have it in the back of your mind. And yeah, so luckily I wasn't too shocked by it. And it's just another kind of bump in the road in this career. So.
And when you're told that you're furloughed, what's the situation in Santa Barbara? Were you in a lease? Did you have to get out of a lease? Because it's not like you can just get up and go.
Yeah, it's tough. So that's a bit of a trade secret in the industry is you want to sign, if you have to sign a lease, you want to sign as short of a lease as possible because things like this will happen. So with that in mind, I was on a month-to-month lease, thankfully. I was just renting a room down there. So it was a good place to be short term. And I'm thankful it was just, I went with my dad's advice and went month to month. So it was just a pick up and go pretty much at that point. So it was no big transition. So.
Yeah, I mean, had you not, gone through that, you wouldn't be in Nashville. I don't know if you prefer this job prior to the old one. I don't know if there's any major differences. Are there any? Is this a completely different situation?
Yeah, no, it's very different as far as the type of flying I'm doing now. So now I'm flying private customers, going to pretty cool places, very different places that airlines wouldn't go into. I fly a smaller plane now. So
what are you flying? Like for the average person out there, they're probably assuming, oh, you're in some big, 737 or whatever. What's the specific plane you're in?
It is a Hawker 400 XP, so it's a small class private jet. But got 9 seats in it. So
Oh,
Usually we
wow.
take anywhere between like two to six people. That's usually comfortable in there. And we do flights between like an hour to 2 hours, 2.5 hours, stuff like that. So it's different in the aspect of it's not scheduled anymore. So my schedule is not like, it's still blocked out for a month, but I don't always know where I'm going to go. So that brings an aspect of kind of excitement sometimes. And I'll be gone for 3 days, like doing, we do like East Coast runs. So we go New York to Florida, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, uh, this customer wants to go down to like Turks and Caicos. So do you have your passport, kind of thing? So it's like on the fly. So it's cool.
What's the coolest
Definitely,
place you've been to so far?
probably Turks or Cancun. Those are my two
Where
favorites.
is Turks at? I don't even know where that's at.
It's down. It's like in the islands off the coast of Florida. So it's down almost like between here and the Dominican. So it's like halfway in between. So
What a
it's
drag.
what a rough life, man, for
And
those
what's the
people.
COVID situation like there? Are they wide open because it's a tourism based industry?
It's
How does that work?
Yeah, it's strange. So they're pretty strict as far as like customs when you get there.
Mm,
So we have to submit our forms and say we weren't in contact and all that normal stuff, the air travel
right.
stuff. And then you stay on the plane. So that's a customs thing as well as COVID. You stay on the plane, they have to come out to you and things like that. But as far as once you're there, it's kind of it's very similar to here. So it's masks once you get into somewhere in the restaurant, masks off, kind of things like that. So that's been another adjustment is when we are traveling, we'll visit sometimes like 4 states in 3 days kind of thing. And,
Wow.
and it's so weird seeing how different every state is treating
Each
this.
place is treating
Yeah,
it.
very
And
weird.
and I don't know if you can disclose this type of information. Have you flown anyone of interest or someone that would be deemed a celebrity that you could say,
Yeah, yeah, I have. It's not necessarily it's just frowned upon basically to
to say
disclose
something?
specific names. We've flown a couple athletes and some music industry people, but yeah, it's been fun. It's definitely that part is it's kind of exciting sometimes.
And professionally, I mean, you have to, like you said, you have to sort of maintain a sense of, I don't want to look frowned upon, or I don't want to do something
Yeah.
that's out of industry standards. So do you get a little more nervous when someone like that rolls up on the plane? Like, oh man, I got some important cargo right here. Or does
Yeah,
the mentality not change?
it's at first for sure. At first you're like you want to kind of mind your P's and Q's and like really make sure everything's up to snuff as far as that goes. But then you forget about it pretty quickly because then it's just like it's another day of work. Things don't change too much as far as where you're going changes and stuff like that. But however you work stays the same. So you forget about kind of who's back there.
Right, because you're just, and like you said, these are hour to 2 hour flights. They're not extensive.
Yeah, not too long. The furthest we've done is like almost about 3 hours was the first. And that's a limit basically on the plane's abilities as far as
Mm.
like fuel and stuff like that goes. So yeah.
And so to kind of turn the clock back, you were a person that I knew, you were always in sports and very athletic, and you go to Fresno State, where we grow up. But your schooling, did that have anything to do with getting you to where you are now? Because that's the part that
No.
I've always found interesting. It's not like there's a, aerospace situation
Yeah,
at Fresno State.
there wasn't a direct correlation for me. So I studied kinesiology, exercise science, which most people go into like PT and stuff like that.
Right.
And I did that because of what you said of being an athlete and stuff. So that was interesting to me. But yeah, it has no correlation to what I'm doing
With
now. So that
flying,
was,
yeah.
yeah, I wanted to do something that, again, that was my dad's kind of thinking as far as like if, the whole industry really fell apart, like it kind of almost did
Wow.
this past year, where if you can't even stay in the industry, you need something outside of flying that you can fall back on. So that was kind of the thought process there. And then concurrently going through school, I was doing flight training on the side. So
And so when you're going to school and you know that this is not what you're going to do long term, you want to go and actually fly. Were
Mhm.
there days where you're like, why am I even here? You
Oh,
know,
it's tough.
I think that's the most difficult thing in college is I think people come in that first year and they're probably more motivated. And then you kind of get involved with all the social aspects of things. You
Mhm.
start to really think about your life and moving forward, and you try to have that work-life balance, with school and everything.
Yeah.
So how did you maintain, staying in school and being motivated enough to finish the degree, knowing that the degree wouldn't necessarily line up with what you want to do long term?
It was tough. That's a great question because I remember there was days that I would sit in class, especially once I got to the beginning years were okay. Like you said, you're more motivated and you're more like kind of things.
Right.
But then once I got to the end, which is ironic because you would think that was like you could see the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing.
Right.
But at the end of my college classes and courses and everything, it gets a little bit more difficult. So then it was like harder to focus on like exercise physiology when all I wanted to do was be in the planes, especially, Fresno State being by the airport. Like you just hear planes all
I
day.
didn't even
So
think about that. Yeah.
yeah, so it was a little bit of mental warfare there. But mainly it was like that was also the end of it. Because when I was finishing college, I was getting close to being or achieving a license that I could start to get paid to fly.
Hmm.
So that was like the two were kind of competing to the finish line. So that helped also because I basically treated the end of school as if like the start of my career. So that kind of it timed up well.
Yeah, I find that super interesting. I think, doing what you're doing, I think to your point, you probably were just ready for it to be over. I know I was too. I came in freshman year and it was like, I'm going to do the radio and I'm going to cover sports and this is what I'm going to do. And then, you join a fraternity and other things happen. You start to say to yourself, oh, I should also have fun.
Yeah,
And there were moments where I was like, hey, I probably should have focused more on doing things to further my career. I don't regret anything because I am where I am now. But I think to your point, I think a lot of people when they finish college, it's kind of like this is just the first chapter now, and I'm ready to get going. Whereas some people view it as that was the greatest 4 years of my life, and I don't know how I'm ever gonna recreate
like,
that.
yeah, yeah,
And that's sad, but I've enjoyed this part of my life more, I think, since we've graduated personally. I don't know. I just think we've been able to do more things from a financial perspective, and you're going around all over the world and in the country.
definitely.
I think it's pretty amazing. But the thing I was going to ask too, why not the military route or the traditional route? And is that something that the industry is suffering from because it seems like there's not enough pilots, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance now. As you mentioned, kind of the military route. Our good friend CJ, who I know was on here before,
Yeah.
uh, who like shout out to him. He's finished up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see him in Fresno. But so his route is another way of getting things done. And then there's also people who get their initial licenses and then become a flight instructor and build their time that way. So there's all these different ways of how to
Right.
achieve your end goal. And my end goal being the airlines down the road, like where my dad was at. So
Yeah. For people
I
that don't know, Eric's dad flew for United, correct?
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, yeah. So that's the end goal. It'd be awesome to kind of nostalgic to be there after him.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I had thought about flying cargo transport for the Air Force.
Hmm.
That was something I had kind of toyed with when I was first thinking if I wanted to instruct or whatever else. And then the aerial survey job kind of fell in my
That's
lap
right.
almost. So that was a really good time builder and things. And I made some connections through that. And then that kind of bumped me into the next, there's different blocks of hours, flight hours that you need to do different
Oh,
types of jobs.
interesting.
So at that point, it was just like, it worked out. I was in the Valley already in Fresno and stayed doing that and then straight on to the next one. So, yeah, it was, and the whole shortage thing's weird now because there is still a shortage of pilots, but because of COVID, there were a lot of furloughs and a lot of all hiring pretty much stopped for a solid chunk of last year. They're starting to open it back up now, and people or they're starting to kind of feel things out and how the industry is going to recover. So it'll be interesting to see how much COVID actually helped the shortage in a weird way of saying
Interesting.
it that way. Because it stopped the need to hire pilots for a little while. So
And, obviously you haven't been doing this for like decades or anything, so you haven't seen like maybe major trends over eras and things like that. But
Mhm.
with COVID happening, what do you see as the future of the airlines? Do you think people
Mm.
will feel comfortable getting back into a plane, or is there going to be this shift where people just decide, it might be just safe for me and my family to stay home. Have you seen any difference personally, or do you see the industry changing at all?
Definitely. It's going to be a longer recovery period than people probably would have anticipated. So my dad was flying during 9/11. He was flying. There was a air traffic controller strike back when, I want to say, Reagan was president. And don't quote me on that. And
We'll get a
so
fact guy to check. Yeah.
yeah, we don't need to do all that. So he had seen the industry kind of bounce back and things, and his opinion is that which is most people's opinions as well. There's been nothing that has derailed the industry or kind of shook things up like this before. And that's because, so like, for example, 9/11 was a very immediate, direct act and an event that you kind of immediately saw how things transitioned after. So there was more TSA, there was more dogs, there was screening and things. So people felt a sense of security immediately after.
Right.
Whereas people were still afraid, of course, and some people still are. But they could see the changes, the physical changes that they could see after that event. Now with COVID, it's like, it's all about public feeling and how they feel about perception and all that. So with COVID, it's different.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
They've always compared the two, and I thought, well, yes, but this has gone on for almost a year now.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, that was one day, and there was an immediate reaction. Everybody banded together and said, we need to change things.
Yeah.
It was horrible what happened, but it's also great to see, all the good that's come from that. But with this, to your point, it's like this invisible fear. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you don't know where it is, and it's just always looming over everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, personally, I've been on a plane a couple times since this started. I can't think of a more sanitary place than the plane.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question. Do you personally feel safe on these planes?
I do because I understand the procedures and precautions they're taking and stuff that they're going through. I also, at the same breath, I understand when people are a little bit nervous about it. You're sitting next to a stranger for hours at a time, shoulder to shoulder, literally. So I get it. So it's hard to place judgment on people and think that they should come back to traveling earlier and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think, like, if I had to estimate a bounce back time, I would say by end of this year and maybe summer next year, through that period, through the fall and the springtime, it'll start to transition back to somewhat normal, but it'll be a while.
Yeah, I just I think we've gotten almost comfortable at this stage with it. I mean, I think in the beginning it was kind of like, all right, this could be interesting. Let's see what comes of it. Then there was this period of just frustration, and then the holidays come around and everything sort of feels off and weird. And just interaction with our friend group has gone way down, I feel like, because it's just harder. I'm over here in Oregon, you're in Tennessee. I mean, can't get much farther than that. But I just think it's going to change people's habits and kind of how they do things. I don't know if we'd be Zoom calling, like we are now. I think those types of things have changed. I think the industry in general with a lot of markets are going to change. I mean, do you really need all your employees to be physically there? I mean, your situation's different. You've got to actually, fly the plane, but you could never work remote. Like you're still needed physically.
Yeah. And it's interesting also how you're saying habits too, because there's a lot, the charter industry has picked up like just tremendously, because there's that class of people who can afford to fly private, which might for them be just a bit more expensive than flying first class, for example, somewhere. They just had never wanted to or stretched to that next tier before, but then a lot of them were making the choice now and moving forward because they think, why not stretch a couple extra bucks and pay for the privacy? So that's interesting. There's been a few days with record numbers as far as private general aviation, like 200% higher than the previous year. So that's been a strange transition as well. Yeah.
And if I want to charter, how does this process work? I've always, because you see people and they're like, "Oh, I'm on a private jet," and you're like, "Okay,
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you own it." You're like
yeah,
that's a whole different, ball game we're talking about. So
yeah.
if I'm somebody and I'm in Nashville and I want to go somewhere, how do I go about getting on one of your flights?
So
How
there's
does
a
that
few
work?
ways. Yeah, there's a few ways. You can contact the charter company directly.
Okay.
You can contact basically a sales team is who would you would engage with, and you let them know where you want to go, what day, and how many people. Those are kind of the three main things. They'll come back with a quote of a certain plane, and they'll tell you how long it'll take to get there, how much it's going to cost the total trip, and if it's even possible. Because for example, we've gotten requests to go from here to California, and in our particular plane, we can't make it in one trip. We don't have the
Hmm.
fuel economy to make it in one leg. So we'd have to stop on the way. So some people, that's a turnoff right there to them. Like, okay, no, thank you. It's fine.
You'd rather just get my ass there.
Yeah, to really get there, they could come back and inquire for the bigger class plane that could make it. It's gonna
Hmm.
be more expensive, but they don't have to stop. So there's different ways of doing that, or you would go through a broker. That's the common
Oh.
way. A lot of them, especially with the repeat clients like that, they'll have a guy they use. Um, so that's usually we'll work with brokers, and so then at that point, the company directly doesn't interact with the customer. Everything's through the broker. So it's a very touchy situation at times. Yeah.
Can you give me a deal?
Uh, you have to check with the sales team. So,
uh, I've never been on one of those before, chartering anything. But
mhm,
I think to your point, I think it's obvious just through social media, it seems to be an increase because I think people, number one, want to feel more safe. If they've got the extra money to do so,
mhm,
why not spend the extra money and just have things be a little bit more private and
yeah,
get where you need to go?
yeah,
So I think that's super interesting. And that's another thing. It's like I was saying with habits and industry changes, is that going to be long standing? Now are
mhm,
people going to look at this and go, wow, why were we ever going through all the hustle and all the, commotion of getting on these big airlines when we could have just chartered this guy and
absolutely.
so I think there's definitely differences there. What's Nashville like if you had to sum it up? I've never been there.
It is different than expected. I would say it's surprising. So I really like it because
Surprising.
surprising, yes, because I would say pleasantly surprised is how I would basically summarize my experience here so far. Coming from Fresno, as you know, we're in the Central Valley. It's not your typical California. It's not the SoCal
No.
or anything like that. So a lot of ag and everything like that. And then out here, and Fresno's very it was a great place to grow up. Not a lot going on, kind of
Right.
thing like that, right? So that's usually what you hear when people are referencing Fresno as the hometown. Nashville is very cool in a sense that each, I guess, part of town and neighborhood and things has its own culture and history to it.
Wow.
And you can really sense it when you leave a different neighborhood. You know where you are when you get in somewhere else. So I live in East Nashville, so it used to be it's like older. It's got some historic parts, and then it's kind of hipster in certain areas. So it's cool. It's cool. I've enjoyed kind of adventuring out and figuring things out. So
And I think it's super difficult to gauge, what a place is really like during all this. I mean, when I moved
mhm.
out here, like I got a pretty good sense, but there hasn't been like any live events, if you will. And I think Nashville, probably more so than any other city I can think of in the country, is known for live music, especially country, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like you've been kind of, I guess gypped through all
Yeah.
this? Like, is there any sort of concerts happening? I don't even know.
There is not any concerts. The Grand Ole Opry, so that's like the
Right.
famous, obviously, radio and everything like that. They just, I think, like about a month ago, they opened back up and are having live shows. That's it for really live music that I've heard, at least. But it is the South technically down here, so things are a bit different. We've had restaurants open the entire time. There's bars open and movies and everything like that. So it's a bit weird because you'll go out. I haven't personally gone out like that just because of work and things. I'm already at as enough of a risk.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, gosh, you don't want to put yourself in
yes,
jeopardy.
of course, restaurants and shopping just like anybody else. But You will drive through downtown in our Broadway area, where it's just like the famous tourist kind of drag there.
Right.
And it's just like, I drove down there on New Year's Eve just because I wanted to see, and you'd be surprised. So there's not live concerts, but there's live music at every other bar.
Right.
It's I would say the only thing that has changed, I'd been here once prior to COVID, and the only thing that's changed is the amount of people out. So it's interesting, but I'm ready to see it at full blast again later on. So
I don't know if you know you've experienced this personally or seen it. I certainly have, being here. Pretty much a conservative town throughout its history.
hmm
This year they voted Democrat, so it's becoming more, you know, left leaning, if you will, and some people don't
hmm
like that. But I think you see that as towns grow, they tend to go a little bit more left because it's usually younger people and it's
hmm
expanding. So obviously, you think of Tennessee, you think of very conservative, the South. With the city, and I know it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country, are you seeing a difference in that culture? And have you ever witnessed people upset by all the new people moving to Nashville? Because that's something I experience here every single day.
Yeah, 100%. So the running joke is, if you meet somebody in Nashville who's from Nashville or even like remotely close, like you found a unicorn, because
Right.
it's just, there is, I no joke, man. I have met, of the people I've met here so far around our age or even just a little bit older, I've only met one who was from the area growing up here. They were from like 30 minutes away. So it's crazy. So there's not so much resentment or anything towards people moving here. You can kind of sense it now and then, depends on who you talk to, but it's more so from a mindset of like, yeah, like everybody's moving here. We just kind of, we've dealt with it. And it's no joke, man. There are a lot of people, myself included, obviously, back in October, but there's so many people moving in here.
Out of the
Um,
people you talk to, where are they coming from typically?
there's a lot of Midwest, so a lot of Indiana, a
Huh.
lot of Wisconsin area, things like that, Michigan, and then a few from like the Georgia area, and then most of it's California. Most of it's California, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's leaving California. People here get mad all the time. Oh, the Californians are raising the
Yeah,
prices, and the Californians, and I, you know, I
same
get
here.
it to a certain extent, but I always said to people, if you go to California and you're not from there, you're from New York, Indiana, whatever, Michigan.
hmm
I don't think we ever had any resentment towards those people. I think it
No,
was anything, we thought it was cool. Like, oh, you're from a
yeah,
different place. Like, what's it like over there? And
definitely.
I think California is pretty welcoming in that sense. I've never felt like it was, you know, the old grandpa on the porch, get off my lawn type thing. But here I sense that, especially from the older crowd, and I can get it
hmm
to a certain extent, but I've never understood the mentality of being so guarded
hmm
and unwelcoming or uninviting to people. So it sounds like it's not really like that over there. It seems like people are going there for work, for a better life.
Yeah, yeah. So Nashville itself is interesting because Nashville's very blue. Nashville itself is very liberal.
Right.
A lot of it, I think, is because of what you said, people moving in and things like that. So it's this little bubble. It was weird during the election, driving around, seeing just tons, dozens of Biden signs and things like that. Rarely did you see any really support for Trump or anything like that. So that was weird. I didn't. That was very
Really
unexpected. Yeah, very like blatantly one-sided. Um,
interesting.
that was in like the city itself. Once you get outside in the outskirts, things change. But as far as kind of the resentment, I've learned that people, when they think of California, they think of LA and San Francisco. They don't, and that is why, you know, there's that resentment towards California from Texas and from the South and everything. Um, so I don't necessarily blame people for their opinion of California, because that's all they know of California. Like they don't
Right.
know the Fresnos, they don't know the Bakersfields, the Visalias, you know.
Yeah,
So
I mean, there's just normal middle of the road, you
yeah,
know, any town America type places.
yeah,
I think it's funny if you tell some. This is what I've noticed too, and I don't know if you get this. When I moved to Denver and I said I was from California, they're like, "Oh, Cali kid," and blah blah blah. Do
yeah,
you surf and all this? And I'm like, "I'm from Fresno, man. Like, I did go to school
definitely,
in Santa Barbara, but I'm from Fresno."
definitely.
But in California, if you say you're from Fresno, you're immediately not cool. If you meet somebody
Yeah,
from, like, I got made fun of in college for being from Fresno all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, my some of my best friends in college were from Newport Beach, so it was like
yeah,
two different worlds. And I don't know
yeah.
if you get that there. Do they think you're like cooler because you're from California?
I don't get as much of like the cool California boy thing because of how many people are from California here. But it's definitely like when you say you're from California, if they're even remotely interested to find out like where, normally they're just like, okay, California, they write you off kind of thing. But if they ask where, then I'm sure that you know this. We have to say Fresno, and then they're like, oh, I'm like Central Valley. It's like in the middle of California, and they just
Yeah,
still have no. So
they
like
have no idea.
4 hours north of LA. Like, oh, okay. So
Yeah,
it's
they have no clue, and I wouldn't expect them to, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But I think to your point, and I mean, I guess we could kind of touch on that. Is you were saying it was a good place to grow up. I think I agree with that. I think it was perfect for what it needed to be. I think you know the family life was nice there. We went to a nice school, made great friends. We still have those friends years and years later, and I think it makes going to these other places number one super exciting and interesting. But I think there's an appreciation there as well. I mean, I don't think you'd probably view Nashville the same as you do right now had you
Mhm.
not grown up in a place like Fresno. But if you were coming from LA, you know, maybe you'd think differently.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely, because Fresno provided a great place to be able to be close enough to things as far as like, the LA, San Francisco, mountains, beach, stuff like that, to go out and experience little like local stuff, but also
Right.
come back to a home that was very homey. Um,
Right.
in a sense that there wasn't a lot going on and everybody kind of knew everybody. It's a big little town. And I I was thinking about that the other day. I'm not sure exactly if I would have the same appreciation for Fresno had I not left. And prior to Nashville, obviously Santa Barbara, and then I was a few other places briefly for flying and things. So um, there's definitely something different about Fresno, and I am curious how many other towns across the country are like that that we just have
Right.
no idea are very. They're the good place to grow up towns. I'm sure there's tons, but yeah, definitely gives you a better appreciation when you go to places like LA, Nashville, things like that.
So, do you see yourself being in Nashville long term? Like, what's kind of your ideal game plan here?
That's a great question. That's something that changes
Putting you on the
probably week.
spot.
Yeah, that's something that changes weekly. I'm enjoying. I've never done proper charter flight. I've done a few here and there before. I've never done it full time. So I'm like really enjoying it more than I probably had anticipated I would. So I think I'm planning on staying here at least through the end of the year.
Wow.
I have kind of a verbal agreement with my company that I would stay through a year of when I started, so that'd be October. But I could see myself staying longer. It's good experience. It's different types of flying. Makes you a better pilot, in my opinion, as far as what I was doing before. You can kind of get a little bit more comfortable when you're going to the same airports all the time. This type of flying makes you think a little bit more, and decision making, problem solving, stuff like that. So it's just more experience. It's all good in my mind. So probably into next year, I would say, and then kind of reevaluate things at that point.
Are they only based out of Nashville? Like, could you transfer to another office essentially?
Yeah, for the charter stuff, almost everything is out of Nashville.
Wow.
We're out of Smyrna, which is like 30 minutes south of
Oh,
Nashville. So it's yeah, that's where our company is headquartered, and that's where we keep a lot of the charter planes. But we work remote sometimes. Like we end a trip, if we go to a lot of White Plains, New York, we go there a lot. So if we end a trip there and there's nothing on the schedule to bring a plane somewhere else, sometimes they'll leave it there and fly you out somewhere. So there's a possibility of being remote somewhere. It just makes things a little bit more difficult with commuting. Yeah.
and did you become a Titans fan while you were there? Like, how did that work?
I have not. I'm still a 49ers faithful, but
Yeah.
I am now a Preds fan. I'm a Predators fan.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that'd be so badass.
This is my announcement. I'm taking my talents to Nashville.
So you
So I
got
do have
the
a jersey. I
you got the
got a jersey.
Subban jersey?
Yeah, I got the PK jersey. So
Dude, I was gonna buy that jersey when they were in the Stanley Cup. Who's that against? Was it the Penguins?
Penguins, yeah.
And I fell in love with that team. I thought they were so cool. I thought Nashville for, hockey, it seemed so out of the
Yeah,
ordinary. And the
very
Titans
strange.
players were at the game. I thought, this is sick, man. And there's nothing like a hockey game live. Nothing.
Yeah, and where we are, I'm about 5 to 7 minutes from downtown, from
Wow.
Bridgestone Arena and all that. So it's a cool place to be as far as location wise. And it's like there's a cult following for that team here. It's
Hell
pretty
yeah.
crazy. They've really taken the team in and just are so passionate about it. So I can't wait to. They're talking about letting some fans in throughout the season later. So if I
Yeah.
can, I'm getting in there for sure.
I know the Avalanche in Denver, where I used to live. I started to become a fan of them because I followed the Sharks here and there. They kept losing in the playoffs, but I didn't have
Yeah,
like an allegiance to them.
yeah,
So I moved to Denver, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like the Avs, and it was my first live hockey game. Fell in love with it right away. The energy is awesome, and I don't know, like to your point, like the following is really the fans are so into the game the entire time.
Hmm.
Whereas like I've been to an NBA game, you look around and people are kind of on their phones or doing other things. Baseball games, forget it. People don't pay attention. So
Yeah,
I think there's definitely a level of fanhood with the hockey games that's a little different. It has kind of a football vibe, but
yeah,
it's not as it's I don't even know how to describe. I think football is kind of a march, and you're
yeah,
watching
yeah,
this
yeah,
march
yeah.
happen. Where hockey, if you turn away for 5 seconds, they could score.
I
And
was just gonna
so you don't want to miss anything.
I was just gonna say it's the activity and energy level in the building for sure. For one, you're
It's crazy.
indoors, so everything indoors is going to be more intense because you're in there. It's the volume and everything like that, as well as the speed of the game. Like there's no real breaks like in football. There's no aside from periods. There's no breaks in the action. So I think
No.
that's definitely why it's so high energy and excitement and stuff
Yeah,
for
you
sure.
got to get in there. I don't know what they're gonna allow moving forward. I mean, I've given up trying to guess and estimate when things will quote go back to normal. I don't think they
Uh,
ever will.
Yeah, no,
I
for
think
sure. I
there's a
think
new
masks
normal.
too. I think masks are here to stay for certain people for sure for a while. I mean,
I think you're right.
you look at Japan and China and things, and that this has been their normal for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so yeah,
I remember being in college and the winter season would come around and there were two guys on my floor that were from Shanghai.
mm,
And I was fascinated with learning about their culture and does the one child rule really exist? Yeah, it does. What? And I was absolutely perplexed by like the way they grew up and what they did. And there's
yeah,
here you tell people, oh, there's a Fresno, it's got 500,000 people. Oh, no way. For every 500,000 people town there's a 10 million person city in China that's considered small.
yeah,
So, but in talking to them, all of a sudden winter months would come around in November, December, and through spring, and they all wore masks. And
mm,
I was like, why do you guys do that? And they were like, this is just like what we do. And looking back at that now, that was what, 5, 6 years ago. I,
mm,
I mean, they were like, to your point, they were probably just ahead of the curve on it. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I think it's definitely here to stay for some people for sure, for
I
sure.
can't. I
But
shouldn't say I
also,
can't stand it. That's rude, but it's tough, man. I mean, it gets to a point where you so badly just want things to be okay, but in order for the things to be okay, you have to adhere to all of these rules, even if you don't like them, for the
mhm.
good of everybody else. Like, obviously, you want to go and do things, but you also want to be able to have your job and make sure other people don't get sick. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's weird in what I'm doing now as well because especially when things were a little bit worse and as far as people there was a lot more uncertainty and at least the vaccine's out now so they're rolling that out and everything. But
Do you have the vaccine? I was gonna ask.
yeah, so I don't yet, but we are technically considered essential. So I'll be getting it I think next month, early next month. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Delaney got her second dose the other day and did not
Oh,
have a
yeah.
very good reaction to it. So
Really?
yeah, she for about probably 7, 8 hours that day, not fun, not good. She's
That's
okay
yeah,
now.
I think we have uh 3 days or 2 days after we get it that we aren't allowed to work. So that'll be our kind of procedure. And I fly with it's myself and another captain or a captain that we're the only one staffed to the airplane. So it's kind of been nice in that aspect. It's just us in there, so we kind of leave things how we like it and all that. So when one of us is off, the other one's off. So that's how we'll get our shots at the same time. Yeah.
Are you going to get the Pfizer or the Moderna, or do you even know?
I have no idea. Yeah, I'm not sure yet.
It's
So we'll
weird. The
see.
Pfizer, they have to store it at negative 70 degrees Celsius.
And there's
And
like
then,
a shelf life once they take it off, right?
yeah, so it gets delivered. It's in dry ice. Then they put it in these net minus 70 Celsius freezers.
Mm.
And then they take it out to be thawed. And then they give you, it's so strange. I don't know how they
Yeah.
came up with this, but that's the Pfizer. The Moderna, apparently, you don't need to do that. But I've heard also negative, reactions from that as well. So I don't really know. I think my work, we're scheduled like it goes 1A, 1B. I think we're 1C or something.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be like in the next wave.
Good.
But I mean, I know your parents are a little older and
Yeah,
probably
they both got
they both got it.
Yeah, they both got their first round.
How'd they get it?
Just being old. They're both over the elderly age. They're both able to get it. I think the process was they were informed that they could, and so they submitted for a time and got a slot to go in.
Yeah, I need my dad to go get it because he's just like, I need this thing. So, just he'd feel a little more safe.
Yeah.
It. But
Yeah.
I find it odd how they've rolled things out, and then just because the shipment takes place doesn't mean that all those doses are being administered. And
Yeah.
so it's just been up and down. And I feel bad for a lot of the elderly people that are, frankly, probably very scared because they're at the at-risk, age and or may have pre-existing conditions. And, you'd like to just have them take it and protect them. I mean, that's the majority of all the deaths have been those people.
Yeah.
And so it sucks. The rollout.
Yeah. And so my parents, being in that age group, they obviously are not going to change the way that they've been doing things, is what they've said. They're not going to all of a sudden want to be traveling all over the place and stuff. They're still hanging tight, sitting low, but they're just, it's that sense of comfort that they were happy to have. Now, I think they get their second dose this week, actually, this coming week.
Wow.
So,
well, good for them. Do you have any timetable on when you're going to maybe go back home, or?
Well, with COVID and everything, I've been back home twice, and every time I go, it's kind of like, it's nice to see them, but I also don't, with how much traveling I'm doing and how many different places I'm going, that
you could be a super spreader.
I know, and I could have already had it with no symptoms. You never know, which is just crazy. So I'm waiting for them to get the second dose, and then I'll go back probably end of the month to go see them. So I haven't been back in a little while. It's nice to go back and see friends and all our full friends over there. So
well, I mean, you mentioned CJ earlier. He's done, so he's pretty much back. He's getting a house built, so at least we'll have a new spot to hang out, I guess.
Sorry, Morgan, that's the new spot. CJ's.
The best part is he's gonna have to live with two dogs that he's never lived with before, and he's got two huskies that he's gonna have to deal with. So that's probably the part I enjoy most, is knowing that. In no way did he probably ever expect that when he met Morgan, and here he is buying a house now, and he's gonna have these two dogs that
dogs which he advised against, by the way. He told her not to get the huskies.
I'll never forget. She goes, "What do you think?" I'm thinking about getting a husky. I said no. And CJ's like, "Oh no, man!" Like CJ's always had cats,
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I said, all right, well, just tell her to don't get a husky. She gets a husky. And then gets another one. I can't remember the age difference on the two. It's a girl and a boy.
Yeah.
But they've got those two. But no, we got to plan something, because I don't go home as much as I used to either. I've worked every holiday since I've been here. It's been really weird. And I don't really like to take time off. And I know, you're kind of the same way. You'd rather just, get going on your work and your job and your life. But it's not as easy to get back, to your point, because of the whole traveling, and it kind of worries my mom and my dad. And we've got a dog. He's flown a couple times, and he's been great. But yeah, we got to plan something when hopefully a lot of people can get vaccinated or feel a little more safe.
Yeah,
it'd be nice to get everyone together, or even go somewhere. I mean, shit, I'd be down to go to Nashville, bro.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get you guys out. I know that was the running joke that McNew wanted everybody out here, and that was the next trip, and we're like, yeah. And now that I'm here, I'm very extremely biased. I will say that 100%. I want you guys out here because it's a lot of fun even without everything being full open.
Yeah.
I'm ready for
How's the
it.
weather? Is it humid? Is it like what?
It will be in the summer. It
Okay.
gets humid in the summer. I came in August when I came before, and it was kind of coming down off that humidity stuff. Um, but right now it's cold. We get a lot of it's like mid 30s, high 30s kind of stuff. And then it like dusts. It's dusted a couple times, flurries, snow flurries, stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a little bit colder than Fresno as far as now, I'd say, with the snow and things too. So not too bad, but I mean, with work, I haven't, had to deal with much of that.
Trying to get this
No, you're
glare out of
good.
there.
You're
And
good.
it's funny too because Delaney's sister went to University of Tennessee, so she's been out there and she was, telling me about it, and I was like, I've never been there, so it would definitely be a great spot, and it would help to have somebody that's already been living there, and show us around. And to your point, I mean, it's not going to be the same as if everything was wide open,
Yeah.
but at least it would be a nice way to visit somebody you haven't seen in a long time and be in a cool place, and be smart about it. Obviously, I mean, I don't want to be a jerk and just fly all over the place and just
Yeah.
go visit people and put them at risk. But
Yeah.
to your point, I think we're in that age bracket where it's like we can, if something were to happen, I think we'd be able to handle it.
Yeah.
But the first concern is always, the people in your family, your parents, grandparents,
Exactly.
etc.
So the benefit is I have a roommate here as well. He's also a pilot. He's gone right
Oh,
now, and
no way.
he's doing stuff. Yeah. So the benefit is that we both are in the same profession. We both do the same stuff as far as traveling. So, and it's just us here, and we don't really interact with too many people. So, as far as coming back home, as in this home, it hasn't been a worry when we're gone because we know, like, if he's around something, then I've probably been around it too, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
so that's
I,
been fine.
Yeah, I mean, I go around town with my job, and I have to interview all sorts of different people. And some people you run into, they keep the mask on even throughout the interview. Some people
Mm-hmm.
take it off. Some people want to shake my hand. Other people want to do the elbow thing.
Yeah.
So you just meet all different sorts of people. And it's really crazy how political it's become. Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like, if you would have told me when this whole thing started, I would have thought, okay, a couple weeks, we'll be on lockdown. Let's get rid of this thing. And within like 3-4 weeks, it became political. And I went, oh no. And it just
Mm-hmm.
seems like everything's become that way now. And it's terrible because there's, to your, like you were talking about earlier, so much has changed in your industry. You've got laid off. All these crazy things are happening. And then people are focusing on, oh, the masks are suddenly political. And it's like, we're
Mm-hmm.
missing the point here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But
Absolutely.
I think it's awesome what you're doing. And I think, if I would have told you a couple years ago that you'd be doing this, I don't know if you would have said, hey, I'll be in Nashville, flying these private charters. I think it's
Yeah.
badass.
Yeah. It's this career takes you not too dissimilar to yours. The end goal is there. The end goal is always there. It's just a matter of the career path and the different ways you choose to get to that end goal that changes frequently. Obviously, you had never predicted to be in Bend and everything, and
No.
it just fell, things fell into place, and you're loving what you're doing now. So that was always my big thing is never get too locked in and set into whatever's happening at the moment. Don't get yourself bogged down because when I got furloughed, I was lucky. I just called my old boss and I was like, hey, at the survey stuff, I was like, hey, I think you need a second pilot still. Have you hired anybody? No. Okay, awesome. I'll be there next week. So you just kind of have to find the silver lining in things, and things will always work out. Not the way you expected. And that's part of the excitement, at least for me. I've enjoyed each step of flying I've done so far. And it's always kind of something new, and it never really feels like a job. Most of the days just feels, fun. So I'm definitely lucky and blessed in that aspect for sure.
Are you the tallest pilot you've been around?
Yes, I am. And I also plan on flying now. It's a smaller cockpit area, so
Yeah. Is
it's
this difficult on your knees or anything? I mean,
I've gotten it down. I've gotten it down to kind of a science and technique getting in and out of there. The passengers will laugh and stuff, and I'll tell them I'm playing Tetris. But yeah,
what are you, 6'6"?
I'm 6'5". Yeah.
6'5"?
on a good day with shoes on.
I wish, Eric. You're like a whole foot taller than me.
It's tough life.
I tell people I'm 5'8", but I don't know if I'm 5'8". I'm maybe 5'8" with hair.
With you, with the anchor hair,
Yeah.
hair.
I got a hat on now.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, are you allowed to get haircuts where you're at?
I am. Yes. Haircuts have been open the entire time. Speaking of which, I need one. That's part of the reason I'm wearing a hat right now. But it's weird. Like that stuff's been open the entire time pretty much. Oh, golf has been wide open and it's dirt cheap. So that's another way I've been I've been exploring the city, just driving to different courses, and I kind of learned the neighborhoods that way. It's like to play 18, all the city courses, all the munis, it's 18 and a cart on the weekdays, like $34.
That's it?
Yeah. So
dude,
it's
I have not golfed in over a year.
Oh yeah. No,
I just haven't.
Paradise out here. So it's like when I'm not working, I'm on call. I get a 2-hour call out. So that's plenty of time to leave the course, come back, shower, change, and get to the airport. So
no shit.
It's been fun for sure. Yeah.
Well, keep me in the loop with everything, man. I think it's awesome, and I appreciate you coming on and doing this. And I can't wait to see where you go next. And let's try and do something and get my ass out to Nashville, hopefully.
Appreciate it, man. That'd be awesome. And congrats to you. I love seeing your clips and everything like that. You're really doing it. So this is awesome.
Be a hard critic on me. I need it. I need the constructive criticism.
No criticism so far. I love the in the field stuff. So I want to see more of that.
All right, man. Well, it's good to see you as always, and tell your family I said hi.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
All right, brother. Thanks for joining us. If you like what you hear, you can like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more. Peace.